It's the first segment of my series on Bob Lutz's involvement in the destruction of the trade towers. This one is over the, it's about how the $300 billion of liquidity that was injected into the system during the shutdown of the market due to the destruction of the trade towers led to the economic crisis that we are now in. I'll start off with a quote from CRS 10 of the Economic Effects of 9/11, a retrospective assessment, September 22nd, 2002. The discount window is available to meet liquidity needs. The Federal Reserve System is open and operating. On the 3 days after the attack, the Federal Reserve, by all three means, injected over $100 billion per day into the financial system. Now here's a bit from a paper called Global Liquidity Drives House Prices Up by Ansgar Belk, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, of the University of Essen, IZA Bonn, and ECB Observer Group. Global money balances and global house price inflation. Between 2001 and 2006, for instance, house prices have strongly increased in the US 55%, the Euro area 41%, Australia 59%, Canada 61%, and a number of further OECD countries. We come up with the conclusion that the liquidity of the Western world has plenty of has contributed to a significant increase of house prices in recent years, and finally culminated in the subprime crisis. The concept of global liquidity and the global perspective in general, not only with respect to global liquidity, but also with an eye on global inflation performance, available evidence becomes increasingly stronger that the global instead of the national perspective is more important when monetary transmission mechanisms have to be identified or interpreted. Hence, inflation is to a large degree a global phenomenon. Here's another paper by Dr. Kurt Rickenbacker, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, written in 2006 and published on Wednesday 9th of August. Reasons for an impending U.S. economic recession. This sudden weakness in U.S. consumer spending has an obvious reason. The spending bubble on consumer durables, that is on autos and housing durables, is going bust. It was largely spending borrowed from the future to be implicitly followed by a payback time. For the U.S., this rapid steep decline in the growth of consumer spending is the first decisive consideration to expect in the United States' impending serious recession. And remarkably, this is happening with record credit growth, and even before the housing bubble is truly bursting. That this most important fact goes completely unnoticed says something about the depth of research. Moreover, this sharp slowdown in consumer spending strikingly conforms to the downward shift in the growth of real disposable personal incomes. In 2005, it was already down 1.3%. So far in 2006, it's zero. Now, it talks about the lack of depth of research having to do with this. And if you talk to almost any macroeconomics professor, you know, they're going on trends and what the research in their field says. Most of them would tell you that the $300 billion that was injected into the financial system wasn't actually corrected the problem. The problems with the economy directly after the trade towers are reputed to have been fixed in a couple of weeks. But when you inject that much liquidity into the system, and the mortgage department, that's where banks, that's the strongest area. They give out mortgages. So when the banks got this money, that's where most of it went, and that was the first thing in the economy to be affected. When you unlike goods, though supply and demand must be met with liquidity. Unlike goods, when demand is met and drops back down, since currency isn't consumed, there's that it just keeps circulating and creates inflation. So these papers are kind of outskirts of macroeconomics, and they lead to the idea that is definitely what happened.